Bam. We're live.
Here we are.
Live again.
Back on a Monday.
Another Monday Night Live. Let's see. We got 7 thumbs up already. That's cool. Bone Pile Boneheads here on time, sober and ready. Sober, that's a good thing for a good story. Going to make a loop with my mutt for a couple hours to see if she can catch the Wampus Cat tonight. Good luck. James Myers, howdy, gentlemen. Cost River Ranch, Siberian, Lycas. Hello, everyone. Bill. Herring, pronounce his name right. Good evening. Bay and Briars, Northwest Oregon. Jeremy is here again. Flaw. Hazelnut Hounds. Evening, folks. White Country Hounds. Good evening to all. Perfect, guys. Thanks for showing up. We got a special guest tonight. He's going to be on here. Oh, shoot. I got to do something. Take over, Chris.
Oh, hey. Went to a Game and Fish R3 meeting this weekend. So got to meet a bunch of clubs, some associations. I felt like we were rock stars there, honestly. So it was good times. Good times. Got to meet a lot of people. A lot of people. Arizona Trapping Association was there. Arizona Predator Callers people were there. AWF, Arizona Wildlife Federation or Foundation. I'm just barely learning all the names, Joe. But it was pretty cool how they all came together. I see some good things happening in Arizona, especially with dog people. So, did some elk hunting this weekend. Didn't see nothing because it was windy. And as you can tell by my nose plugged up, the pollen looks like City of Phoenix pollution out there. Visibility of half a mile because of pollen. It wasn't very good. We're raffling off our dog box Wednesday. So cool. We have I think we have 75 people entered in on it. Or 75 entries. A lot of people did $100 for 5 entries. Nasty wind here with lots of areas of low to no. Oh, it's horrible.
Oh, the wind.
Everywhere. Oh, it's nasty. Richard fight.
50 mile an hour here today.
No, it's horrible today. And then it dropped down. It was like 40 degrees, 36 degrees. I almost had to put on a sweater. A hoodie. Almost. So, yesterday I did throw on a flannel in the afternoon. Cutting right through you. So no elk, no snow. Looked like it's snowing to the south. So if we get enough snow tonight, maybe I'll go do some lion hunting tomorrow. Be one of them Robert Chases. He's on. Evening all. Other than that, politics. I had to do some PI cases today. Catch up on those. Find some people. Finish those up tomorrow. That's about it. That's about all I did.
I haven't been doing a whole lot. Running around mainly.
I have a lot of people that have put in for this dog box draw. And I'm gonna give you guys a little teaser. I'll give you a little teaser. A lot of guys have put in for this dog box draw, and they said they might donate it back if they win it. Now, if that happens, we got a super raffle coming. It's going to be cool. That's all I'm going to say.
Just a teaser, huh?
Just a teaser. And it's going to be very limited. It's going to be a little more expensive, but it's going to be a good prize. I might even put in on it. Yeah. Gene Morris trying again. Gene Morris. He put in on that dog box, and I think he has the most entries right now. Wait. No, he don't. I have another guy out of California who's got him beat. because he put in as many as he did and then went over to coldstrikegear.com and bought some AWDA swag, which I haven't even bought yet. I wish I would have, because I could have wore an AWDA hat over to the Game and Fish R3 meeting. And your favorite word, politics, but well, it's not really. It is politics, but the CBD, Center for Biological Diversity, which their name in itself ain't very good as far as what they do, but they put out their little release, their little press release, and it's just as good as the first one, just as good.
Read it.
Let me try without
Glasses.
I don't need glasses. I can't brief. Phoenix, the Arizona Game and Fish Department and the Game and Fish Commission are backing a bill to strip the state's wildlife agency of its power to regulate the use of dogs for hunting mountain lions, bears, and other animals. The bill would also subvert state law by gutting the public's right to petition on wildlife policy and hound hunting while circumventing public hearings and internal revenues. Started off great. Basically saying to protect our rights, our traditional rights. By doing that bill, the HB 2552, it would strip their rights. Okay, let's break into that just real quick. If they do a ballot initiative and they strip our rights from running dogs on game, our traditional values of running dogs, that's what we've done for thousands of years. Does that not also strip the rights of the Game and Fish Department to let you or let you not run dogs? Let's not be hypocrites there, CBD. Conservation groups recently petitioned the commission to ban using dog packs in Arizona, citing serious risk to wildlife, public safety, ethical hunting practices. There's no documented nothing about public safety, any hounds or running working dogs attacking somebody. I had a guy tell me he's asked for that report to see if there was anything. Nothing. The petitions say releasing packs of hunting dogs on public lands threatens endangered animals, including ocelots and jaguars. Man, I could break this down all day long. There is nothing that harasses a jaguar. We've had Cody King on here. We could get Tony Revere on here and tell us the stories about how incredibly uneasy it is to catch a jaguar. It's not, and you don't run them out of nowhere.
No.
Increases the risk of conflicts with people. Just Tuesday, I'm out running. My dogs bark. It's a weird bark. I hear other dogs barking. It's somebody walking their dog in the forest. So all I do is, my dog's back. They come back. I ride up. I said, "Oh, you coming down this road?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "All right, we'll go this way." Me and my dogs. His dogs are more aggressive than my dogs, but they were controllable. He controlled them. We turned left, went another way. There's no reports of any of this happening, harassing people out there. Violates the principle of fair chase and leads to inhumane treatment of wildlife and dogs. That's only the first two paragraphs. By backing this bill, Arizona's top wildlife officials are subverting the public's right under the state constitution to petition for rulemaking on dog pack hunting, said Russ McSpadden, the hero of the day, a Southwest conservation advocate at the Center for Biological Diversity. Ethical gymnastics like this raise grave doubts about the Commission's commitment to endangered species protection and its capacity to review our pending petitions. You think they're going to think about this when they do a ballot initiative, and let's just say it goes through? Doesn't that do the same thing as we're trying to do with the HB 2552? We're trying to keep dog hunting safe. They're trying to make it illegal. If they make it illegal, doesn't that prevent the Game and Fish, the Constitution of Arizona, to let people make that decision? Hypocritical. By backing this bill, Arizona's top wildlife wildlife officials are subverting the public's right under the state constitution to petition for rulemaking on dog pack hunting, said Russ McFadden. Oh, did I already read that? Yes, I did. On February 10th, State Rep. Lupe Diaz, Republican from Benson, said in a committee hearing that he helped write the House Bill 2552 to counter recent petitions asking the commission to ban hounding. At the same hearing, Arizona Game and Fish Commissioner James Gaugnauer, I think that's how you said it, said the commission supports the bill. The Arizona Game and Fish Department's Ed Sanchez and Dave Hernandez signed in as supporters of the bill. The Game and Fish Commission, which oversees the Game and Fish Department, is responsible for setting regulations related to hunting, fishing, and wildlife conservation, ensuring decisions are based on scientific principles and public input. The Arizona Constitution guarantees the public's right to petition the government. Efforts by Arizona legislators to strip the Commission's ability to respond to public concern, scientific evidence, and ethical considerations concerning dog pack hunting are in a blatant violation of the public trust, said Sandy Barr, good old Sandy Barr, director for the Sierra Club of Grand Canyon, Arizona chapter. She has some amazing things to say. Amazing things to say. It's almost unbelievable that the Arizona Game and Fish Department and commissioners would support this widely undemocratic attack on the American model of wildlife management, which the department and commission claim to uphold.
1 minute.
Again.
1 minute.
Oh, I'm not going to finish it. It's long.
Gavin.
They
Gavin
basically just hypocritically just coming on there. They're bringing on the White Mountain Independent had put out an article saying anonymous hunter, by the way, anonymous. The dogs are an unfair advantage. Why should we spend $25 on a tag when the animals are all slaughtered the first weekend? Let me just touch on that real quick. This last 30 seconds. Only 21% of bears were killed over the dogs. 21%. The other 79% were spot and stalkers. So it wasn't, and 10 to 30% of the kills with dogs were less females. So there you go. It wasn't our dogs. Our dogs did not slaughter them. It was spot and stalkers.
There you go.
So I will see you CBD on April 11th. And I will contest this emotional rhetoric that they put out in there. I'll probably write an article and just dissect it down to the bone and break it up and then put it out to press.
Our guest is here. Gavin, can you hear us okay?
Can you hear me, gentlemen?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
We can hear you. How's it going?
He's in a different time zone, right? You're in a different time zone?
I'm currently on the east coast of Australia, so that's Australia Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
So
cool.
It is midday here. It's 12:15 in the afternoon.
Oh, shoot. Lunchtime.
But it's a bit of a time travel because we're in Tuesday and you're in Monday.
Let me see if I can get your audio adjusted just a little bit.
Well, good. No one will hear the crap we talk till tomorrow, right? Does that make sense?
Right.
How's the weather? How's the weather over there right now? We're supposed to be in a winter, coming into spring, but it feels like summer.
Well, that's not a bad thing, is it? I don't know how you guys do the cold temperatures. Huh?
We had 50-mile-an-hour winds here today.
Yeah.
We're expecting a tropical cyclone to hit the coast, probably somewhere in the region of tomorrow, anywhere through until Friday. So there hasn't been such a weather event on the east coast of this continent for more than 50 years. It's quite a event that everyone is preparing for. There's sandbag filling stations and expected winds of gusts up to 150 kilometers an hour and seas of swells reaching 12 to 15 meters. Sorry, I'm doing the feet conversions and the Fahrenheit conversions. But yeah, no, it's quite a big event expected.
Well, tell us who you are and what you do and all that good stuff.
Well, while I said I'm on the east coast of Australia, I think you can hear that I'm South African, or the accent's certainly not Australian. Hopefully, it doesn't sound that.
I couldn't tell the
Um,
difference anyway.
but I'm a professional hunter. I have a business called Panther Trackers. We've been hunting leopard over hound for over 20 years now. Um, I initially started off as sort of subcontracting to larger outfits and then moved into my own space. And now we market direct to the clients and take the client on the safari in Africa, predominantly in East Africa, in Mozambique. We also have coastal country. And our specialty is leopard. We do all the other game around that because a safari is typically 14 days. And it doesn't always take that long to catch the cat. We do need to do other things, but Africa is such a rich continent for game and diversity. There's so many variable species, everything from big to small. So making a 14-day journey over there, most guys want to capitalize on their time and spend as much time in the bush as possible.
Is leopards all you do, or do you guide for other things?
So leopard is our focus, and that's our core competency, and obviously that's all we're using the hound for. But we'll hunt buffalo, we'll hunt crocodile, hippo, a myriad of antelope, other small game. There's many species that we hunt. Um, we are the most competent in leopard, but it is a very difficult animal. Um, I guess it's very comparable to the mountain lion, but we have to be quite selective. We're not just shooting any leopard. We generally have to go for a particular aged male, so mature aged male, which means that we don't really free cast at all. We really are looking for the tracks, putting the hounds on the tracks, and pursuing that one animal. So it does make it a little more complicated to cross paths with that one cat in that period of time. There's many others, but we have to be very selective. When you cross over into hunting other species, you could almost make a selection through your binoculars, especially on things like buffalo and other big antelope. You could take one or two of those every day if you wanted to in well managed areas. So yeah, the competency on the other game is not as difficult to attain as it is for the leopard hunting.
Take take us through a hunt. Say you show up there, and how does the hunt go?
Yeah, almost all the areas that we operate are very remote. So these are big government concession lands. These are large areas, and to give some context to that, like about the smallest area that we operate in would be 500,000 acres. So it's big areas, and the largest is probably 850,000 acres, roughly.
Wow.
So big areas, and the only land use model on those areas is hunting camp, is a hunting outfit. Well, we may have more than one camp. Typically, it's one main base camp, and then we'd have little satellite camps for fly camps that could be temporary. But to be able to adequately use that land, you can't do it just sort of from one camp. However, it is the responsibility of the operator to maintain the whole area, and the major maintenance there is anti-poaching work, really. There's a lot of encroachment. Africa is a burgeoning population, and everyone needs some space and a little corner to make a living on. So to keep the poachers out and to protect the wildlife, the timber resources, the fish resources, and we have to try and cover that whole area. So a typical day is either heading out of the main camp or one of the fly camps, and we're scouting areas, and we're scouting that generally in three ways. So we're always looking for tracks on the roads, and we'll be dragging those roads in the afternoons to make sure that whatever late afternoon and nocturnal activity is going to be pretty clear for when we hit the morning run at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., whatever it might be. But so we're looking for tracks on the road, very similar to what you would do in an American setup. We also will be strategically placing baits. So because these areas are really large, we can't have an intricate road network that would cover adequately all the areas and crossing routes and usage points of the leopard. We often have to place a bait in a space where we draw the leopard to a point. And in the old times, before we had the technology of camera trapping, now we would just sweep the area under the bait and tactically around that and interpret the size of the leopard that was feeding, or the leopards that were feeding through the trap size. But now with camera trapping, we can really get a great idea of which cat's coming to visit a bait at what time it left. There's a lot of information we can gather that. So that'll be another method that we're using for scouting. And then the third method is that we'll actually physically put well-experienced trackers out into the field, generally in groups of 2, just as a bit of a backup of security. There's a lot of things that want to bite you and kill you in Africa and eat you. So generally, if you got a buddy with you, a little bit more confident than you can make it through to the other end. But we would drop off trackers sort of in a leapfrog system where we would lay them into a particular riverbed or along a particular game path or route, and then loop ahead 3 hours later or 4 hours later, pick up the trackers and retrieve the information that they've gathered there. So that's generally what we're doing every day until we actually connect with the cat that we want to pursue. And we may connect at a space in time where we can actually put the dogs down and go in pursuit of that leopard, or it may just be a starting point for us to track further. The efficiency of many of the African trackers is so supreme that in a lot of the little bit more available areas, a little bit more sandy open areas, can take a leopard track for a distance. So we use that to bounce between the hounds and the humans and the hounds and the humans until we get to a point where the scent is strong enough for the dogs to take the rest of the race. And that may happen on day 1, it may happen on day 7, it may happen on day 14. There's no real way of knowing that. So you just have to keep pumping it out day in and day out, and try and keep your activity in the most productive areas. What we found is that leopard use about 70%, 30% of their territory about 70% of the time. So while a home range may be 20,000 acres, they're only going to be operating in a fifth of that most of the time. So we have to identify where that is. So the more time we spend hunting the same areas, which we do quite seasonally, is building up that database of where to look, where not to look, and try and best use your time for success. That morning window is the period where the hounds can work and where we can get available scent, climatically, the conditions of temperature and wind, and prior to the sun burning off all the scent. We have that little window, and once that's passed, then the rest of the day we'll use either for hunting other game, so we may be in pursuit of a buffalo, eland, or several other types of animals. Or we might be using that as a bait, and we might be scouting new areas, but generally it's just a full day out in the bush. We'd leave camp early in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning, and return late in the evening, and that's on repeat 14 days, or until the cat falls.
What is the terrain like? I mean, as compared to some of our areas here in the United States, or if you're familiar with them, I mean, is it more of an arid desert type country, or is it more like our higher country, or what is it like?
There's a variety. It is not one type of topography or one type of habitat at all. As diverse North America is, the African continent is equally. So we operate ourselves on three different main um, biome types. So we'll go into a coastal forest, which would be a tall timber, hardwood, native hardwood forest, very thick canopy, thick undergrowth, very humid. So think of an African jungle, but not quite as intense as the equator, But yes, very dense. That's one type of habitat, and that brings its own challenges and benefits. And then we go into sort of a semi-arid area. We call that a Maumba woodland, which is also quite timber dominated, but a little bit more open. And then the third type of habitat we cover is the typical savanna. So if you switch on the National Geographic channel and you see those umbrella thorn trees and the giraffe standing and feeding, we go into that type of environment as well. So there's many types of thorns, spike thorn, hook thorns, and that might be a little bit more similar to what you would expect in sort of the western side of your country, there, maybe somewhere like Arizona, a little bit more similar to that. So there's a variety, but still there's more, especially as you move across west on the African continent, the southern section. There you do get truly semi-arid areas to complete desert. No one really hunts the complete desert for leopard. However, they do exist on the periphery of that. But in the semi-arid, there's a lot of hunting in the semi-arid conditions in regions like Botswana and Namibia. And then that would be what you would expect right down in the southwest of your region.
What what do you prefer? I mean, what would you rather?
Um, I think there's pros and cons to everything. Hey, each adventure is you just never know what's going to be coming around the corner, and that's the joy of this, is that there's no definitive outcome every day. Anything could happen. But I do like the coastal setup. It's challenging as a hound hunt. There is a range of climatic factors there that you really need good dogs to be able to work that, and you need persistence, and it can be frustrating. And for those that are very familiar with hound hunting, they accept those conditions and the challenges. But often we'll get guys that are expecting a sort of fait accompli, and you put the dogs down on a track that looks pretty hot, and they turn around and walk back to the truck. So it is challenging, but it is also very nice to be in that environment. It's always warm. It's never cold. Um, it's always green.
Where's well, what part holds the highest concentration of leopards?
What's your
Yeah,
population of leopards?
the population of leopards is like how many stars in the sky? Who knows? Huh?
Is it really
There,
high?
there is. Well, maybe that was a bad comparison. It's actually not that high. However, nobody knows. We get a variance in population studies where you'd read a paper and they'd say that there's 10,000 leopards, and you'd read another paper that says there's 100,000 leopards. So, while there is certainly investment in science and population determination on the African continent, the the funding and the technology and the persistence is not quite what it might be in other areas of the world more first. world areas. So what I can say is that leopard are very healthy, populations are very healthy in the regions where they are experiencing some form of control and protection. So in all of the hunting territories that we operate in, once we remove a territorial male, and in some cases that's a prime male, and in some cases that's a post-prime male, but within a matter of months, that territory has been filled again. It's a void that just gets taken up immediately. So I think that's a very clear indicator that the greater population is healthy enough. We see females with cubs on trail cameras regularly enough to know that even in the areas where there is male offtake or regular male offtake, there still is a, a breeding population and a healthy replacement of animals that are being removed. I think the areas that have the least protection are actually agricultural areas where governments in their nearsightedness are not presenting quota. So people that are farming the land don't want to compete against predators. They don't want to have their valuable game, their small stock, their large stock being killed and eaten by leopard. And so they're poisoning, trapping, snaring, aging, all of that. I think that drops the leopard population significantly. Now they still remain. I mean, we found them moving into urban areas. You can still find leopard to this day in urban areas. So it's very similar to the mountain lion. To give a number, I wouldn't even know where to start. But yes, it's healthy, and sustained offtake makes all scientific sense, and there's no real model that's showing that it doesn't, despite all the attempts by the anti-hunting community to try and motivate cancel health trophy hunting or any predator offtake. There's just no real model, to my knowledge at least, that shows that there isn't a value or there can't be a value put on these animals by sustained offtake by consumptive harvest.
So you guys, I mean, they try to attack your hunting rights also.
No, that goes as far as foreign countries. I would say that there might be even less local attack or attack originating locally than there is internationally. I mean, some of the biggest anti-movements that have an effect in Africa would be coming out of the United Kingdom, France, certainly the European continent, the States to a degree as well. However, in terms of the States, I think the positive benefit from massive organizations like Safari Club International, Dallas Safari Club, and numerous others, I think that energy outweighs anything that is negative at this stage. But yeah, for instance, the United Kingdom is looking at putting in legislation that they would cancel any trophy imports or the importation of any Cody.
Look at
or the
that ugly mug
importation
there, gosh darn.
the importation of any animal parts originating from
Oh yeah.
Southern Africa, and that really is a nail in the coffin to trophy hunting. Of course, there'll be ways to move around that, and there's already 100 different options. Instead of taking your actual skull of skin home, there's synthetic things that are as replicable of the original, but it is still a hurdle to overcome.
There's Cody King. You went
What are
over
y'all
there and
doing,
hunted
man?
leopard, didn't you, Cody?
I did. I went with Gavin twice. I highly recommend it. Highly
Cody
recommend it.
is Cody is a pressure shooter. I've hunted with many people in the world, but you have to put pressure or put Cody in a near-death situation, and he puts a bullet between the eyes. But if it's an easy day, he's going to sling the magazine at it. And I don't know if that's just out of his own entertainment or if he's a
You got to
frontline.
forget it. My father's Uncle Tommy, so sometimes a little bit of that may be just for kicks. I'll tell y'all a quick story. So my senior year in high school, I graduated, and my dad took me to Canada on a bear hunt, and we spotted this really nice bear, and we stocked up on it, and we were on a road, and I shot that bear behind the shoulder, and he's running right. I mean, he came running right for us. He was not charging us. He just happened to be running in the same direction we were standing. He didn't even know where we were. I shot him again, and he kept coming. And I think I missed him once with the third shot. And I'm digging in my pockets trying to get a bullet because I'm out of bullets. And the young guide that was guiding us, he took off. He left us. And I finally I finally got a bullet out. And as I was loading that bullet in the gun, my dad was standing next to me with his hands both in his pockets. And he said, "You know, shooting bastard, you're going to get us killed." And I jacked that round in that gun and I shot that bear, I don't know, 10 or 15 yards. And like I said, the bear never knew we were there. But y'all have never met my dad, but Gavin has twice. And if you knew him, it's pretty comical.
Well, then,
Yeah, I would have loved to be in there. Uncle Tommy has on a couple of safaris that we've had the pleasure of sharing with him in Africa, has certainly been the center of the campfire. And just when you think that he's going to get to the end of a wit, because surely it comes to the end sometime, he comes up with something fresh and new that keeps us rolling around for the next 3 days until he refreshes that again. So yeah, he's a great man.
well,
Pretty,
Tim
how
B.
long? Go ahead, Chris.
Well, Tim B asked. I was going to ask the same thing. I wrote it down. You got a big problem with poachers over there of the leopards because there's so many of them.
Full of everything. Um, there's a couple of um, value chains, and that might not be the right word, but for the lack of vocabulary, I'll use it. But um, people are quite impoverished in all around Africa, certainly at a level that's unfamiliar to most of the Western world. And they live very close to um, a sustenance line, and in a lot of the areas where hunting occurs, these are very rural, wilderness, or fringe agricultural areas. And the ease of protein, or the ease to collect protein by going out into the bush and capturing something, is far more simpler, although it is still energy expensive. It is still far more simpler um, than trying to create some business or some job or some other form of income in a very, very uh, taxed and drunk market where there's just not that much opportunity. So yes, poaching is almost a way of life for a large percentage of the population. They're forced into it through survival. But there's a lot of commentary around it, and it would take another 6 hours, and I'd probably start chanting like a politician by the end of it. But the the effect is, yes, that there's a lot of poaching, and it occurs in many forms. It occurs in snaring, wire snaring, which is the worst type of poaching, because snares are put out in literally there's thousands. They'll blanket areas around key travel routes, around water points, around funnels, movement funnels, and sometimes they don't even return. So many animals would die for no purpose, but still it's a pretty gruesome death. They effectively strangle themselves on the end of a cable, and those are not limited to small animals. They'll snare buffalo. They have traps for buffalo. Yeah. Um, um, then the guys that are a little bit more ingenious, and you sort of can respect them a little bit more. However, they are the enemy, so to speak, because they are illegally harvesting animals, and the effect of it is far greater than the benefit to even the population, even to the environment. But those that are a little bit more ingenious who actually create or build their own homemade firearms, and they'll fabricate lead slugs and bullets, and they'll have pipe guns and very interesting um, firearms that they make, and they account for a little bit less of a problem. I think their efficacy is a little bit greater, and they'll move into an area and they'll harvest some and then they'll move out again. But the main drive around this is that populations in the nearby towns and even right through into some of the cities value that wild meat, value that. So the bush trade, it's defined, is quite a big trade, quite a big market, and it's not sustainable at all. And Cody, I'm sure, will be able to attest to this. On the first safari that we undertook, we went to an area which is a more communal area. So the population of people is slightly greater, but they're still very primitive, living in structures that are made almost entirely of natural material. Very few of them would have even a zinc roof. Predominantly, it's mud and sticks and grass. But there's still quite a few people there, and the wildlife is very limited. And then on the following safari that he joined us last year, there we were in an area that had much better control, a removal for the most part of humans, and the wildlife populations were 5 times that, maybe not quite, but a lot more animals. So yes, poaching is the number one obstacle to biodiversity on the continent and to conservation.
So
Some of
they
them
are eating
poachers
the
use
leopards. Oh, sorry, Cody.
some of those poachers use dogs too, guys. So you
Really?
can't. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's completely different. Here in America, we think of poachers, and it's nothing like that. I mean, it should have its own word and its own definition because it's just not the same. And in many instances, I mean, it's a bunch of poor people trying to eat,
And
and
and probably
but
has been their way
to
of
their
life forever.
yes, but they kill everything, everything. I mean, they poaching is illegal. We would see poachers. Logging trees is illegal, and every day there'd be dozen of logging trucks going down the road. I mean, it's not. It's the land of rules with no enforcement,
No enforcement. Yeah.
and they destroy their land. They literally just milk it for everything it's worth, and then they move and build a new stick mud hut a few miles down the road. They chop down all the trees, they kill all the animals, and
And that,
it's terrible.
Gavin,
that's
do you
due to
have any?
poverty,
Oh, go. Yeah.
right?
You.
That's due to poverty,
Yeah. Poor.
not just because they're just trying
There,
to make
I
money to
mean,
be
yeah,
richer.
there is two sides to it. There is a large percentage that are just impoverished folk, and they are trying to survive the day in and the day out. However, there is also a lack of um, foresight, because many men will have numerous wives and dozens of children. So you could find one man having half a dozen
That's
wives
that guy right there.
and 20 plus children. So it takes an amount of meat to feed that bunch. Um, so yes, there is sort of some, some uh, lack of planning there too. But again, it does relate to a poor mentality and a poor man's lifestyle because he's investing in children, which will then become his retirement policy. So they will care for him if he makes it through to an old age. We have retirement annuities and things that we would save money for and create a security for when we're old and decrepit, where those just doesn't occur. So in a very natural African sense, their cultural retirement policy is children. Yeah? So a lot of work to get to there, but anyway.
So there's
But yes, there is still another. So I'll finish
uh,
quickly. There is still another of that where it is for profit. So there's an organized trade in poached animal parts, and that would be meat, skins, fur, ivory, a fang, tooth, tusk, anything that you can take from an animal will have a value either for consumption or for a witch doctor. So in a spiritual sense, in their hocus pocus medical field, for lack of better words, there will be a large portion of predator bones and ivory and rhino horn that will be exported to Asia and other areas of the world. So yes, there is actually an organized crime contingency that obviously are profiting the greatest, but the foot soldiers on the ground are out in the field. Those are the ones that are getting caught predominantly, going to jail, and their 22 children starved for a few months until they're released.
Do you have many conflicts with those poachers yourself or your hunters?
So it's actually defined in the ordinances of the professional hunters legislation in many countries. I operate predominantly in Mozambique. I'm licensed there, and you can actually um, read what your legal responsibilities are. And they are to deter poachers, but not to engage in a sense that it could cause any uh, um, danger to your primary objective, which is to safely guide the hunter that you are in his charge. He has hired you to guide him and to make sure that he goes through that period safely and unharmed. So the answer to your question, there are actual anti-poaching crews that are designed, trained, um, funded, outfitted to go out and combat illegal hunting, poaching. So it's not really in our realm. However, if a guy runs across the road in front of you and it seems like a safe enough uh, um, objective, then yes, you certainly could arrest him, hand him over to the anti-poaching crew. Very little comes of it, but yes,
Are are
that's
are
is it
kind of.
are they ever aggressive towards you guys though?
Yes, I mean, I've never been in a situation directly where I've been shot at or anything by poachers, but those stories do abound, Africa. So yes,
isn't it Africa where they use the dogs to track the go after the poachers? Don't they do that in Africa too?
that they do, um, and that is almost entirely being funded by the rhino poaching prevention operations. So the poaching of rhinoceros for their horn is a massive problem. Um, to date, just in the Kruger National Park system, and that's up until I think mid-February, I picked up these statistics. Um, so just that first little section of 2025, the Kruger National Park is about 4 million acres. to give you a reference. But just January through until mid-February, 35 rhino were poached just in that Kruger National Park. Now, the Kruger National Park is a national reserve. Think of Yellowstone. So that's the South African replication of that. And it has as much control, anti-poaching mechanism. The dogs operate there. They have aerial support. There's a lot of money that's gone into it. Yet, despite all that, the poachers are still that motivated.
Is it seasonal there? I mean, are there only certain times of the year you can hunt leopards?
Well, you could hunt them year round, but we have a lot of tradition that's put in place, and then some logistical common sense. And generally, it's the period sort of May through until October. Now, very strictly speaking, and this is more of a traditional thing, and these boundaries have been elasticized for profit due to the hunting market, and it's very valuable dollar generating thing that it is. But very definitively, traditionally, our hunting season was all the months without an R in. So May, June, July, August. And that's also the period where you would find the least pregnant females, the least dependent young, the least reproduction. So impact to breeding would be fairly minimal. But also science has developed that we understand the ecology of all these species a little bit better. We can almost know exactly when the kudu rat will be. You can map it on your calendar like you could with elk or whatever it may be. So we know a lot more now. These are traditions that have come down from a few hundred years of occupation. But they do also point very well to that Western concept of sustenance and conservation. So that these things that they even exist indicate that men and women a couple of hundred years ago were still very aware of overconsumption and of saving for tomorrow. And what are we going to do next year and the year after and the year after? And I think that's conservation, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I guess there's no other way to define it.
Yep.
Cody, tell us again about your hunts. How did they go?
In Africa.
Yeah.
So I went twice so far, going again in May. My wife may have heard that, so I gotta.
You said it too loud.
Uh, yeah, let all these secrets out, man. I got a Tate that works for me now, and he's got a big mouth, so my wife knows everything.
That's bad. That's
But
bad.
no, they were really cool. So the first year, kind of like Gavin mentioned, the first year we went to what you would consider kind of like public ground hunting, not really like that, but a lot of poaching, a lot of little villages and stuff around. That's where we saw, the effects of poaching. There wasn't much game at all. Ironically, there was leopards.
Well,
Uh,
I got to ask you because I have this vision in my mind when you say the little villages and I mean, is it like we see on National Geographic?
I mean, yeah, except they're wearing nice. I mean, not nice clothes, but they're all wearing clothes and carrying a cell phone.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but other
And
than
they're all
that,
on TikTok. They're all on TikTok too.
I mean it. But a bunch of those
Well, Cody
people.
is such a legend there. There's several of them that are on this live chat right now.
Yeah. If you see Lahinde
And
coming up down there, may be some kids asking for candy. So, but there was a very healthy leopard population there. Um, we got after one, baited on the ground, probably a female. We treed a smaller cat. Um, we had a successful hunt. We just couldn't get on a big tom, and uh, but there was. I mean, we would drive around and see nothing, no animals, and driving for hours. Versus this next year, we went to more of like a private ranch, private land. Where they have a team of people. They had, I think, 10 people that just patrol for poachers, and you would drive around and see animals every day. It wasn't quite the Texas high
I was going
fence,
to say like
South
a high fence in
Africa,
Texas.
animals everywhere. No, it was as wild could be. And just to give you an idea how wild it was, we're driving down the road, and my dad asked the guy, he goes, "Man, I want to see a zebra. Are there any zebras here?" And that guy said, "No, we've had this place for like 15 years or something, and we've never seen a zebra." And we went about half a mile further down the road, and a zebra walks out across the road. It's truly, truly wild. I mean, a lion could have popped around the corner at any time. Anything. It's as wild could be, but managed enough to where it's not, just poached to gone. We lost Brett,
Where did I go?
Yeah. I don't. You disappeared on us. There
I'm
you are.
back.
and so completely different type of country. Different terrain. I mean, one place was like Las Cruces, New Mexico, and the other place was like Taos, New Mexico. I mean,
Oh wow,
almost borderline jungle
high country.
type stuff. And then, uh, so this second year we were right on the coast, and the other year we were further inland and kind of in the mountains. It's really been cool. It's kind of been a progression for me to get to see it all and hunt different places.
Oh, I bet. I
But
bet.
and then in May we're going. I don't know where we're going, so Gavin handles all of that stuff. But in May we're going somewhere new, and we're gonna hunt some smaller game.
You're still looking for that big tom.
No, I got a big tom.
Oh,
I
did you?
I, I shot a yeah, I shot a really big tom the second year that I went.
Oh, cool.
Um, but no, this trip in May, we're not going leopard hunting. We're gonna go hunt like little cats and their equivalent to our coyotes and stuff like that with some gentlemen that do depredation hunting with hounds for a living. So
Oh,
we're
cool.
kind of just going on a pleasure trip kind of deal.
Speaking of hounds, Gavin, what kind of dogs do you use?
Everything that has long ears and it's prepared to put its nose on the ground long enough.
Just
Um, yeah, we've we've seen almost everything through Africa, and there's been a lot of French blood that's come in there, a lot of more modern American hounds that have come through.
What's
The
those white
almost
hounds called?
I know what.
Dogo Argentino,
Oh,
No, no, no. The hounds that you used
no,
to have years ago.
those French
and
dogs.
the the Gascon Saintongeois.
Yeah, big
Yeah,
kind of a
that.
pointed head and real big ears.
That the Gascony
we,
hound.
we don't use dogs we can't pronounce their names very well.
Yeah.
That's why it's red tick, blue tick, or Walker.
So you don't use those type of dogs anymore, Gavin?
No, I do. I have two that are entering into the pack this year. Um, I had a bit of a section where I didn't breed that for quite a while. However, the genetics have still been around, and I've gone back and picked up some of those dogs now, which will be entering the pack this year. And each of the different breeds, however mixed they are sort of now in Africa, but each of the kind of breed that you're familiar with, the only thing we haven't really seen much of is a plot hound, but almost anything else you rattle off, we've seen it in Southern Africa. And they all have their different strengths and weaknesses and best use scenarios, and they're more suited to certain styles and different ways that different people hunt. So it's exactly how it is for you guys, it is for us. And I think it's more of, that's just the way that the tool is used. That's just what the hound is. Some, you know, the 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 the, the typical characteristics of a blue tick as opposed to the typical characteristics of a running walker, whatever, all that has different use and different strengths and benefits. Personally, when I first started out, I think it's probably similar to most, the most attractive stories you read and heard of, and when you were sitting with those more mature guys, they always revealed their love for that cold-nosed dog that can walk that track and open up, boom, for
Hey, you're getting personal
and
now.
Brett Vaughn
You're
stuff
getting
over there.
personal now.
yeah. So that's always, and wherever you go in the world, I mean, I've hunted hounds in Europe, in America. I've never been to South America, but North America, on the Australian continent, and that wherever you go, there's that kind of love for that track. However, it doesn't sort of catch as much as the dog that runs to catch, that hunts to catch, that chases to catch. And when you set out on a 14-day window safari, you can ask Cody. It's a significant investment, and it is my responsibility to have the best outcome for that hunter who is putting his hard-earned dollars, and lots of it, into having a successful hunt. Now, for most, especially the American sportsmen, I've found that the journey of the hunt, the adventure of the hunt, is almost as important as the harvest. However, I've never come across one who said I don't want to shoot it. So
Exactly.
it is a fundamental that you need to aim everything you can at a success. So if you come back to the original question, we've moved away a little bit from the hounds that will really pleasure you with that wonderful tracking and trailing ability, to the dogs that are a little bit more driven to catch, and it's necessary. I like the look of the long-eared rupee hound. I love that far more to look at than the tighter, more snouty, fast-paced hound. But the one that puts the game on the ground for us in our style and in our conditions are the dogs that work to catch a little bit more.
Well, I mean, I'm sure if you're guiding a hunter, he doesn't want to see you put down on a 2-day-old track and boo-hoo on it and have a dog that will actually work that out. You're going to skip over that and go to a hotter track.
How many
So,
dogs are you putting down at a time?
like a pack of 9, I've found that works well. 8 scent hounds and 1 sight hound. If it's not a sight hound, then we'd have a fighting dog like a doggo or something.
Well,
But I like 8 scent hounds. You can drop it down to 6 as well, but 8 gives you the ability to have a little bit more consistent depth. 8 gives you that voice power and intimidation on the leopard. When you go much more than that, then they start to actually interfere with each other. They can get bundled up in the dense bush, and that can start to actually capture 1 or 2 or catch 1 or 2. So between 6 and 8 is about the best number. Less than 6, you put them in the danger of being overrun or being beaten by the leopard, physically beaten by the leopard. whereas sort of 6+, I think in my experience, the leopard is more intimidated. And generally, while many of them will do an initial fight on the ground or go into the caves or try and stand their ground, generally, if they given the option, if the terrain or if the habitat permits, they will tree. It's just a smarter route for them, and their 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 design is to survive for the next day and to survive fully intact. So engaging in a fight that they perceive they can't win has no benefit if it's not going to reward them with an energy, with a protein, with a something. So it's always different if the wounded is left. If the leopard is wounded, then everything is different. Then that changes the whole dynamic. But while it is still fully intact, they generally want to escape. So 6 to 8 dogs is the right number. The ninth, I always like that sight hound. They just add a little bit of a extra dynamic, can help a little bit, especially in tall trees. Their sight reflex is much better than the scent hounds, and that helps us a little bit. And they're just really nice dogs to have as well. There is always that aspect. We're balancing between being very effective and being very competent with enjoying it as well. There's a portion of this that I do love what I'm doing as well, and I want to continue loving. So I wouldn't want to hunt something that I don't like. Yeah,
The sight hound, you're talking about like a greyhound cross?
exactly. Yes.
And
A butcher.
you say that
Yeah.
they add to being able to sight something in the trees?
Yes, they are much more sight triggered than a scent hound is by design. When we're
I've ran
talking,
a lot of
I
sight
don't know what.
hounds, but I didn't know they'd tree.
Oh yeah, and they, that what we have access to um, is a lot closer to the wolfhound than it would be to the greyhound or saluki or what would
Like
be
a
used for chase.
Bazori or
Well, actually, you might want to look this up if you've got something in front of you there, but it's called a boerwinton. Boer.
I'll write it down, look it up later. Boer.
Sure. BOERWINDHOND. Boerwinton is the way that you say it. Translated to English, it's farmer's wind dog. That's the direct translation.
Wow.
But what it really is a little bit more of a hardy running sight hound. And we get them in a rough coat, we get them in a smooth coat. We prefer the rough coat. It doesn't have any major benefit. It's just preferential. But they bite very hard. They are very aggressive. Obviously, they're fast. They are very sight triggered. And those are little aspects that just add to the pack. Um, they're not perfect. Their feet are not excellent. So when you get into really rocky ground, they don't last long at all. But they've never been selectively bred for that. No one has tried to chase a rabbit through the rocks. There's never been in any design or breeding plan to have a sighthound that can run fast over a mountain. The idea is a sighthound to run fast over flat land. So while their feet are hardy enough for that, interestingly, when they start to get that very undulating and strange terrain underfoot, they don't last very well. Whereas the hounds, some of them, they can just go forever. The scent hounds, they can go forever.
So the sight hound, does it add a lot on the jump?
Yes, absolutely.
So absolutely. So
And
probably the reason they can sight so well is that they're close enough to be able to see when it goes up.
there's that. And that Boerwinton has had selective breeding over a couple of 100 years, where nose or the ability to use the nose on a hot chase. I'm not talking about any sort of cold trailing. However, they do learn to put their nose down, but They're not designed for that, but they have the genetic manipulation now to actually be able to follow that scent on the wind. And obviously, we're chasing bigger game with it, and they were designed to be able to chase jackal predominantly, but also antelope, and actually chase it down and capture it. And you don't find either of those always just out on the open, flat land. And especially initially, when this breed was determined and built, many years ago, it wasn't just big agricultural lands that the John Deere tractor had plowed and cleared. That does exist, and the dogs are used over those, but it was through bushveld conditions. So they will not hold a direct line of sight onto their quarry indefinitely. It's going to move out of sight at some point, and they still need to be able to pick up on that and then pursue and pick up and pursue. So they do have the ability to use their nose on a hot chase, which is a huge plus for what we do.
I had a big, I called him an Appaloosa coyote hound. He was a sight hound, but he could use his nose. He could run a coyote on the wind. He couldn't run a coyote on the wind fast enough to catch him, but he would run him on the wind. But he was a unique hound. I also caught a lion on the ground with him. So he was a pretty neat dog.
How tough are these leopards? And you hear stories about jaguars, and they're just massive and tough. How tough are these on the ground?
Yeah, they're dog killers. It does depend on which one you come across, and it does depend on the terrain and the situation. They typically try not to engage in full-on combat. It's their idea to intimidate, evade, and escape. But if you do force it, then they are lethal, man. They don't kill the dogs quickly. They will bite into the spine or the head, and generally the dog is going to die sort of slowly, sever the vertebra, and that. Most of the injuries we receive or that the dogs receive in our line would generally be scratches, very occasionally a bite on the hind when the dog has been chased by the leopard and the leopard just manages to, gain that ground and catch a little bit of bum fluffing, and those are generally the injuries that we get. Wild boar, bush pig are far more damaging to the dogs than on average than what the leopard is. But if the leopard turns and decides to fight, yeah, the dogs are no match.
Can they get
You
after
try to
people
Chris,
stay.
too?
really quick, guys.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I've got some stuff that I got to do. I've been hunting for a few days, and I just got home.
Well, good.
And but I wanted to get on here and say hi to everybody, and then I wanted to, I know everybody on here has heard me talk about Gavin and his hunts, and then also his volunteer program, and I really recommend that if anybody wants to go, this is the man to do it with. But and this is almost too soon, but not too soon. So I'm going to say it. Chris, a while ago, you asked how dangerous those leopards are. And I was over there. We were hunting, and the dogs had this big old leopard bait on the ground. And Gavin was walking in, and he wasn't really paying attention. And I saw this leopard coming from the side, and he went to jump on Gavin's back. And I got him. But he got me.
Still
So
recovering.
And
one
I'll
of these
forever be
stories is going to
grateful,
stick.
Cody.
Real quick
One of
update
my
on your arm
bullshit
too.
stories was do what?
Real quick update on your arm before you go too. How's it doing?
No, I'm doing good, man. I'm Superman. I was hunting today. I just got a superhero scar on my forearm. That's about it. So
Oh yeah, you
it
tell all
Well,
kinds of lies
we,
about
we,
that.
Congratulations.
we appreciate
that's
you
yeah.
saving Gavin.
Somewhere, someday, somebody's gonna see Gavin and be like, "Hey, man, I heard Cody grabbed that leopard and saved your life. And Gavin will play right into it too.
And
But
I thought we had agreed that was going to be the lion story, African lion story.
I,
So
yeah,
maybe we better
well,
redo this so that Brett can release that one later.
yeah, no, it'll just get better. Hopefully there won't be no more scars that deserve such stories. It but no, I just wanted to say hi, Gavin. Good to see you, man. See you in
You too,
May,
bud. You too.
Chris.
Yep.
Brett, don't work too
Thank you.
hard.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for
coming on,
dropping in,
We'll
Cody.
see.
Cody.
We'll see you guys.
Well, Gavin, tell
Okay.
us about your volunteer program. What do you got going on there?
Yes, I think we're about the only operation that offers this in Africa, and we reach out predominantly to experienced or sufficiently experienced houndsmen um, all across the world, but obviously the States is one of the major hound hunting nations. So we offer the ability for houndsmen to come over and participate in the leopard hunting life for 2 weeks. You come over. We try and make it as affordable as possible. There are some costs, it's not for free. And we do that by giving you a cost of what it would be for accommodation and food and those type of deals. You got to sort of cover that through the expense. There's some licensing fees and things that you pay, and you make a contribution to communities, and that we have to tie the loop completely so that everybody sees some benefit out of it. But if you volunteer your time, which means handling the hounds, which means driving the truck, which means uh, bullshitting with the hunters around the campfire, which means whatever it might be. That life that we live on every leopard safari, you can participate in that. You don't get paid, but you're
You get
getting
the
full
experience.
experience. Yeah, and you will
I'll
be under the tree with a leopard or many, and you'll be handling and working the dogs, and the pack will be like your own for that period. And we try and embrace that the experience is almost like your own.
Is there like a
I'll,
big
I'll come
discount
over
for
and
a guy who
cook.
wants to come over and film and publish it on YouTube?
Absolutely, guys. Come, we tell you book the flights, send me the itinerary, we've got the space.
I'll come
It
over and
is it
cook,
is
but
limited, but yeah,
I get to bring my own meat.
These big bear meat.
It, it's legendary over here.
It's in
It's
the
well,
only
bottle.
10 or 12 or 15 years old, but I haven't killed nobody with it yet. Right, Brett?
No,
well,
I didn't get very sick at all.
well. There are veterinary controls, but the corruption in Africa is famous. So you'll probably get past that. However, meat is such a valuable commodity that I don't know that you're going to make it past the airport with that stuff.
They're going to confiscate it. It's all right. It don't look like meat too much. It's old.
So, speaking of Cody's injury, are are leopards? I've always heard that they were pretty dangerous and that they could be real aggressive. Is that true?
Yes, it is. They they have that fight flight zone, and once you enter that, especially if you push them repetitively, then they are very prone to attack. It is one of the most dangerous animals in terms of that. The only thing that would probably be more dangerous would be a crocodile, because the crocodile is on actually consuming you. But a leopard will attack unprovoked or slightly provoked quite easily. And there's many, many stories around it. I've been attacked by a leopard as well, which was provoked, obviously. But it's not at all uncommon if you are going to be working in that environment long enough. at some point it's a high probability, a high chance
Do they
that it can
even
be
though
attacked.
even though with the hounds they pick out the hunter or the person and focus in
Yeah,
on them?
when the human enters the mix, that apex predator shines like a star in the night. The the hounds are like mosquitoes, really. You know, the leopard is aware that, and they come across this, from cubs. They encounter wild dogs, they encounter hyena, they encounter lion. So they're very familiar with uh, uh, their own anti-predator strategies and defenses. But to the human, we definitely change their atmosphere. So that said, when the leopard is freed, um, we try and stalk that tree. We try and stay downwind. We try and stay um, out of sight and try and get into the position where we can shoot the leopard without it being openly aware of where we are. And they are very aware, and especially when they feed, because they have that advantage of height. But they're above the sound of the hounds. They can hear beyond. They have um, binocular vision. So how you see through your 10 by 40s is what their eyesight is
Wow.
consistently.
Wow.
So yeah, so it is difficult to get into that space without being noticed. But if you remain sort of outside of a roughly a 50-yard zone, you're generally not going to provoke them. But that's not always possible.
Someone asked,
Well,
is there information on your website about the volunteer program?
We don't actually put it on the website. So what I can do is direct anyone to the Facebook page, or what you can do is, if you go onto the website, there is a call to action button. It's a floating WhatsApp icon. You just click on that and send a message, and then we'll supply all the volunteer program. We have a very limited space. We take 3 volunteers a year. So it is, it's not really part of our business plan as such. It's more that we have found a great networking system, and we really get some valued guys in that are experienced, that know what they're doing, and they only benefit from what we're doing. And I think it's a nice opportunity to be able to share. So yes, short question: Facebook, Instagram, or there's a WhatsApp button on the website, and we'll shoot you through the information.
is there a limited? You got like a waiting? Is there a lot of people wanting to do that?
Yes, in terms of the volunteers, I think we're fully booked this year. We have 1 space available in 26, 2 spaces available in 27. Um, so yeah, shoot it through, and there's a bit of a process. We want to know, and I don't want this to sound like there's a selection process, but we just want to know that everyone's going to be happy and that the expectations are equal on both ends.
Do you know how much it costs altogether? Because you got your price, and then they have to buy the tickets, and they have to get all their stuff. What do you have kind of a
Yeah.
common sort of price? What it's going to cost somebody in the end?
Yeah, so it depends on what kind of route you want to take for your flight to Africa, and where you want to sit in the plane and that. But those flights have certainly come down. So for a few $1,000s, you'd find a return flight to South Africa and back. All the local transport is included in the price that we put forward. And you're not really coming back with any trophies or anything. You need 1 bag. There's daily washing. We take care of all of that. You don't need to bring any other equipment outside of a Leatherman, your Garmin, those type of things, the tools of the trade. But you can travel very light. It doesn't take a huge amount of investment. What you use for hunting in the States, you pretty much can use with us in Africa. It's the same
It's
kind of
kind
stuff.
of good that you have the wait list because most of us houndsmen are broke, and most of us houndsmen would ride, in the baggage cart just to get there, but it gives you that time
Yeah.
to save up that money.
Absolutely. And we offer that as well. You don't have to throw all the money down on one state. I've got guys that, a guy coming out this year, he's actually coming out for a month, and he's been paying since 2024. So we
take
we
payments.
accommodate that as well. Yeah, you just pay as you go. You book your date, and if you get a good little bonus, or if you stay away from the bar on the Sunday or the Saturday, save that money and raid the cookie jar, whatever it is, sell a dog, whatever, then you send that our way, and we keep a running total, and you just make sure that it's sorted out before you need to depart. We ask for it to be settled 90 days before your date, and that just keeps it clean and clear for everyone.
Yep. And I want to go back to licensing. You said about licensing. So in Arizona, I have to have a guide license, and I have to have all the insurance for the.
Mm.
Do you guys? Is it kind of similar in Africa as well? You have to have all your permits and stuff.
And everything, yeah.
Yes. So in terms of myself, who is the professional hunter and the guide, I have to have completed all the qualifications, theoretical and practical. I was awarded. I did this, more than 20 years ago, but yes, and it still exists to this day. In some areas, you also have to serve a 2-year apprenticeship, which anybody who's been an apprentice knows that all they're doing is sweeping the floor and getting paid nothing.
Elon Musk is letting me down. Elon Musk is letting me down again.
Did we lose everybody? I thought it was just me.
Oh, here he comes.
Thought it was just me.
No, it was everybody. Elon Musk is letting me down. My Starlink isn't working. Well,
to launch some more
anything else you
satellites.
want to add, Gavin? I mean, did we miss anything? Dadgummit. Piece of crap. There they are. They're back.
Thought he's gonna have to sign out again.
I know. I don't have any control over that.
Sorry, guys. I think it's a little bit temperamental, the reception one way.
Yeah, that happens occasionally on Starlink. You get a little dead spot.
Hmm.
But
that's a game changer, that Starlink. We've been using that in Africa as well. That's a revolution, and we can be sitting almost anywhere. I've got a rig where I can just plug it into the inverter on my vehicle, put the dish on top of the cab, and we can be sitting, as long as we've got a clear enough view to the sky. We have scrolling through Facebook anywhere in the world, man.
That's this one. Yeah, take it with me.
They can get it in Africa, but George Lampert can't get it over there in
Virginia. He's the only spot in the world you can't get Starlink.
Elon must have an ex-wife there or something.
Yeah, he blocked it right there.
Elon's from Africa, right?
Yeah, he's from South Africa. He's from the same country as I'm from. In fact, he was born not far from where I grew up. A little bit of a different time zone. I think he's a bit older than me, but yeah, he left when he was around about 18, to my knowledge.
Let's segue into that. I'd like to let's now grown up in Africa.
Sure.
Shoot. Whoop, it's coming back. It's coming back. Sorry, guys. Nothing I can do about it.
You know what? At this time, sometimes, even on my lives, I think people go home, they jump on, and maybe just suck all of our energy out. So people at home that aren't watching us, get off your stuff so we can do our show. Right?
Get off
Is
the
that fair?
get off the
I'd like to
starter.
go into your
It's California, is what it is.
freeze up again. Oh no, we're. I like to kind of know how it was growing up in Africa.
Was it was I've traveled around the world, not the whole world, but I've traveled around sufficiently to say that I wouldn't really want to change it for anything. It was a wonderful space to grow up in, and I did grow up in a good time as well. A lot has changed in Southern Africa, particularly in South Africa, in the past 30 years that have made it a little less desirable than during the time when we grew up with a little bit more.
Jeez. Well, we're back again. We keep
Are you
having
there?
those blips.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful place to grow up. Really, it gives you a different identity to know that you're in a land where you step into the wilds and you're surrounded by the elephants and lions, and those epic creatures become, uh, by extent, a part of your sort of your persona. Not mine only,
Sure.
for all the many millions of people that grow up there. It's the same attachment that you guys would have, no doubt, to your wilderness and the inhabitants of your systems as well. So it's a cool thing to have association to that, especially when you're growing up. And I look at my little children now, and I see how those stereotypical characteristics of those different big animals is it's impacted to them. So yes, it was a great place to go.
Yeah, I grew up watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
I don't think we got that show.
Tim B wants to know, $1 million question of the night. Gavin, how did you get into becoming a pro hunter? How'd you get into it?
Um, when I left school, I did a year of BCom LLB. I was because I'm supposed to be a lawyer, but I wasn't smart enough or dedicated enough to do that. And so after a year of that, I walked away and went into studying conservation. And then I moved into that field once I had achieved the qualification. And I worked actually in the non-consumptive industry for quite a while. But it just wasn't part of the environment enough. You're just too removed from it. You're too much of a spectator. You're not enough of a player in it. And my mindset has never been. I mean, we grew up with hunting and fishing and all that, so that's not unfamiliar. But to go into the professional side of it, um, uh, uh, to be a spectator just was, we are part of the environment. I've never subscribed to any notion that we are
Absolutely.
aliens and that we don't belong here. We are mammals. We are predators. Maybe one day we're proven wrong for that thought, but I've revolved my life around that understanding. And so to be at a distance just wasn't sufficient, and to take the move and step into the world of professional hunting was a way to be able to plan for a little bit more of a economically beneficial career path than what the general conservation career paths are. Even if you're in the scientific community, you can be on the lower earning end of that. And I've always had an idea of wanting to be able to, buy the nice rifle or the nice truck and the nice, so it costs a bit of money. So I'm a little bit aware of that. I've never been uh, uh, wanting to be very rich, but wanting to be able to afford the good things that you see in the magazines. So those were the two kind of angles that professional hunting presented. The industry does offer a much better economic perspective than you would in any other African wildlife or most other African wildlife career paths. And you really engage with your environment. You're part of it. And you're spending a lot of time in the bush. So it ticked all the boxes. And in 2002, I completed my qualifications, and I think, hunting by the March of the next year.
Nothing like being able to make a living doing what you love.
Now,
Correct. Yeah.
you've hunted in the United States as well, right? Am I right about
I
that?
have, yes. I've been fortunate enough to hunt a few different areas there. I've always been accommodated by really good people, very generous people, and it's been to my benefit, and I appreciate all the time there. I can remember being, and it's quite a few years ago, but I flew into New York and then across to Denver, and then drove through down into Durango in Colorado, and went hunting down there. And then we were able to step down into the Navajo Reservation in New Mexico, and I walked
Dang it.
in the tracks of a big size track, and I was putting my footsteps in that, and it's an experience I still remember. I mean, we never saw the bear or anything, but just predominantly on the western side of the states, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona.
Have you killed a bear before?
No.
I bet Cody would do a little trading with you, a leopard hunt for a bear hunt.
Yeah, no, he's put all those things forward, but it's not a fair trade yet.
What else do
You
we
come
got?
over here and I'll show you how dogs chase a bear. I don't know about catching it, but I'll sure put some miles on
You
chasing a
might
bear.
have to add the sight
Come hunt
hound to
with
your
me
pack.
first, and then go hunt with someone good. Yeah. Well, you're always welcome in Arizona.
It's
I
so
ain't the
much about
best,
the hunt.
but I'll cook for you. I'll
You get a
cook for
free
you.
you get a free hunt in
You won't be
Arizona with
hungry.
Cody. No trades, just a
Yep.
free hunt. What else do we
Take
got?
you up on that for sure.
Anything you'd like to add, Gavin?
I, I was thinking about some
Oh, dang it.
potentially a conversation, or maybe this something that's very familiar to yourselves. But a question I often get is, what's the difference between, what makes it different being a hound hunter in Africa, being a hound hunter somewhere else in the world? And I think one of the biggest things that you might not all appreciate, or you might, but is the depth of community around it. Is that in the States, as it is in Europe as well, the hound hunting community is quite a tight knit understanding. High competitive, of course. Nobody's good dogs are as good as yours, or everyone else's dogs are good, but very competitive, and don't ever come hunt in my space. But we're welcome to talk about it on neutral ground. But it's still a very information exchanging culture that if you're not in that not in that circle, might be in the family, or might be a local community, an area, or a town, or whatever it is, that there's a lot of the finer workings of hound hunting that will take a long time for you to discover and learn. Um, so that's certainly something to be um, preserved, and something to be celebrated, is those communities that you guys in the States have access to, and that you have as your base for learning. You could go and join a hunt, a bear hunt, wherever on the East Coast, and you'd be amongst men and women that have, descendants that have been doing this for 3 or 4 or more generations.
Yes.
And the information flow there is something that you actually cannot incorporate in a series of books. What you hear on a Saturday afternoon after the hunt is more than reading Walk with Wick, both volumes. So it's certainly something that we don't have, and we have to cut a lot of ground to be able to get that what you guys have. It's absolutely to your benefit, and I think it's the only real way around it. This is a team sport or a team lifestyle in a lot of aspects.
Is there not a lot of hound guys in Africa?
Very few, very few.
Why? Why is that? Is it hard to get the dogs, or is it just maybe hard hunting, or hard to get the permits? Like if I just live in Africa and I want to go run some dogs, what do I have to have just as a resident of Africa? What do I need to go run my dogs?
Yeah, in some cases it's a little simpler, and in many cases it's much harder. So if you let's just talk of some of the benefits. Being able to go hunt problem animals, animals that are causing damage for agriculture in some sense, you get quite a few open doors there, provided you're not going to be a fool and burn the bridges. So don't leave the gates open, don't cut fences, don't do silly things. So if you maintain a fairly clean slate, you'll have a lot of hunting ground, and you'll have access. But you're going to be hunting species like bush pig, jackal, caracal, bushbuck sometimes, that type of species that's going to cause problem to agriculture. To be able to hunt a leopard, you almost, unless you're going to do it in a professional sense, you're going to be doing it fairly illegally, because you need to have a permit. It's a protected animal. So you couldn't really run a pack and do leopard hunting as a hobby. There is some areas where you can get depredation permits and that. And many years ago, it was a little more simple than it is now, but now they're in teeth. And you can't really maintain a pack unless, for those, for leopard, unless you're doing it professionally. So in terms of why there's so few, and there's a couple of reasons to that. Hounds have been on the African continent, I think, longer than on the American continent. If we go back in history, we find that some of the very early English settlers brought in hounds into the Cape region, the Western Cape region of South Africa, to be able to control species like caracal and jackal and leopard, those that were preying on the small stock industry, which was one of the founding industries, agricultural industries in South Africa. So sheep, and to some extent goat, predominantly sheep, at a period in the country's history was a very big part of the economy, certainly in that region. So there was definitely the motivation to get rid of things with fangs and claws. But hounds never really progressed that much further than those regions. And one of the main obstacles was something called the tsetse fly. And the tsetse fly has been eradicated in large tracts now, but initially during the stages of settlement and pioneerism, the tsetse fly was this wall of prevention for any domestic stock. So the tsetse fly is a vector of the trypanosomiasis family of disease of blood and blood parasite, and any domestic stock is pretty much doomed. So even right now, there are areas that are tsetse belts, and it's very difficult to take hounds into that. I do operate in those areas, but we have quite a strong prophylactic system, and we still do lose some dogs. But that was sort of like a prevention of this becoming a common tool. There was also a cultural perspective where the definitions of the ethics of hunting by the predominant colonial European descent pioneers, that hunting on foot with a rifle, tracking the game, was the gentleman's way of hunting, was the ethical way of hunting. And to pursue something with dogs or hounds, unless it was to be flushed onto the wind, a bird to be shot by a shotgun, to pursue an animal with dogs wasn't seen as a gentlemanly thing on the African continent, as a ethical thing. So there was another boundary for this to become a widespread tool, a widespread form of hunting. And it was always reserved into the ranks of a depredation tool. So trapping with foothold snares, gin traps, and that never ever really made it outside of either depredation work or collecting for pelts. But it never became a kind of sport, lifestyle type of thing. And the same hounds kind of fell into that classification. And that stopped it from going into this more commercial world. Even now, we still have a lot of bad sentiment towards hound hunting by some people who still believe that true ethics in hunting are picking up a bow and an arrow, a compound bow or a rifle, and going out and executing a one-shot kill that you can, and then you are the hunter in that sense. So yeah, those are the two main things that we haven't seen. And of course, when it's not a popular style, then there's not very many people doing it, and so there's no sort of economy based around it. There's no real tangible value around it. So that also excludes people from going into it, because it seems like there isn't really much of a future road to go this route. So there's been a lot of obstacles for this to become a widespread thing.
We've got some of that here now. I mean, and Chris is fighting that through what, Chris? Through his program.
Yeah. Yep. I started a kind of an alliance for dog hunting, and it is our tradition. We've been doing it for decades. It was a good thing to do. It was it, you know, and I don't know how hard the anti-hunters hit you guys or kind of rally against you there, but here it's an everyday event. I mean, I started this in January, and I'm typically on the phone 2 or 3 hours a day. Even today, I had 2 hour conversation. I had 2 hour conversations. I had 2 3 hours today, just today, talking about like what they're doing. So are they real? Are they real present there for you guys as well? Are they trying to stop it, like what you're doing personally, yourself, your company?
We found that our greatest um, attractors come from the ranks of hunters. We found that some of our governing hunting associations have been the ones that have forefronted the closure or the prevention of hound hunting in many aspects. The country Namibia had a pretty effective hound hunting industry, uh, fairly small, but it was still effective, and it was servicing the trophy hunting market well. But for many reasons, the Namibian Professional Hunters Association made a decision to um, cancel that as one of their supported methods, and they lobbied government to change the legislation. So the Professional Hunting Association of Namibia lobbied the government to outlaw a hunting method, which in many parts of the world, for the most part of the world, the tradition of man and canine precedes almost anything else. I mean, what did we have? A dog and a rock, and then a dog and a spear, and it's that fundamental to our DNA. I've not ever, and there will be people out there, but I've never come across somebody who's come on a hound hunt with me and has not walked past the truck and rubbed the dog's ears and talked all cute to them. I've never come past that person yet. And it makes no sense, but it's inside everybody. They might not own the dog. Even at home, they might not, but they still have this connection. And everybody, after the dogs have done the job, they come to me and they said, "Where can we buy steaks for these dogs?" It's one of the most common things.
That's
And
great.
so I have a steak for the dog's kitty that I spend on beer when I get back to Australia.
You know, I stopped at a friend's house who lives in a like a RV park, like a retirement park, where they're all just little trailers. And I had my mule, and I had 9 dogs in my dog box, and all of his neighbors came over and brought doggy treats for my dogs, and they brought carrots and apples and everything they could for my mule. You know, my mule just kind of runs rampant in my trailer and hangs her head out. But you're right. You know, you pull up to a gas station, same thing.
Yep.
People have
Right.
to come up and pet the
Yep.
dogs, and they ask you about them. You know,
Does anybody hunt leopards just over bait without hounds?
Yes, in fact, that is a far more frequent occurrence than the use of dogs. And it's the nature of the leopard, the ecology of the leopard permits that because they are scavengers. So they will eat anything, anything. So yes, you can lure them to bait, and you can actually keep them at bait in some sense for a few days. It's very similar to the nature of a bear. Um, you can bring them to a bait, you can hold them at a bait, not indefinitely. They have other jobs that they have to do. Procreation is their number one function and the forefront of their mind. But yeah,
so what other hunting is going on there? I mean, as a typical hunter, I can just go out and hunt something. What is your like
so are you
Utah?
talking as like a citizen, or are you talking as
Yes,
a
just as a citizen,
as a citizen?
like in Utah, it's a big deer country. You know, people love to hunt
Mm,
deer in Utah or Wyoming. I'll say, you know, New Mexico and Arizona, they love hunting bear and lions. You know, but we still
mm,
have, you know, you talked about other organizations, and I think we had a unity, and then it went into the where the deer hunters don't like the hound hunters. I just talked to a guy at a meeting, and he's for hunting, but he says, "Man, when I'm hunting bear and I hear those hounds, my heart sinks because they all think it's just easy going. They think, oh, you just go get a dog, you let them go, and it's not necessarily true. But I think the more we get these antis coming in trying to be sneaky, saying like right now in Arizona, it's we want all dog packs outlawed. But don't worry about the bird guys. That's what they said. Don't worry about the bird guys. We're not after the bird guys.
yeah,
But everybody
yeah,
knows when they get rid of lions, bears, coyotes, raccoons, they're going to go after the bird guys. And the bird guys know that.
that's right.
So I've seen in the last few years a lot of these organizations kind of teaming up and working together, saying, okay, this is what we need to do, you know.
Mm,
And there is some segregation here and there, and it's tough because a lot of people who hunt deer in Arizona, especially archery hunters, they don't understand. You know, we're running in the same time they are, and we are on public land. We have public land. How is it over there? Your land, private to public. Texas, all private. Arizona, public. It's a big difference. How is it in Africa? Is it
mm.
all private, or do you have some sort of public land that people can just go hunt?
No, almost every parcel of land is wrapped up in public or government ownership, and when it is in private or government ownership, and when it's in private, then any game on that piece of land almost always has a value to the landowner. That landowner is earning an income from the land in many senses. We have seen more recently where this sort of hobby farm industry has arisen, where people don't really need to derive an income from their land. They are, especially post-COVID, they are an MD of a company that they sit on, Starlink and run, and their property, they don't really need to derive the land. But more traditionally, every piece of ground has a value of generating some form of income. So if there's a kudu that occupies that space and there's someone who shows a demand for that kudu, well, there's a transaction that can come out of that. So we found that any private owned property is typically going to charge you to hunt. And there's many hunting scenarios which would be similar to your Texas setup. And then when you're on that, there's all the legislation that allows for private ownership to determine the management of their own land. So they would set their own quotas and say you can only take 6 kudu this year, or they'd get other people that say shoot everything, or whatever it is. So yes, generally as a citizen hunter in the country, South Africa and most of Southern Africa, you need to go onto private land and you need to pay something in some form or the other. And that is quite market driven as well. But you don't really have to go to a counter and buy a tag. Now, when you go to the government land, very little of that is made available for hunting. There are parcels where you can, but generally what happens there is a hunting operator will come in and create a deal with the government and lease the land or purchase all the tags or however it might be. So the industry in Africa is strong enough that there is always, or almost always, provided that the property can support enough of a business model with enough animals, that means, then there'll be somebody who's prepared to come and put up a camp or repair a camp or put in temporary tents or whatever it is and bring hunters in, whether they are other local hunters or whether they are international hunters. So most of it is wrapped up. It's very difficult to be able to just go onto government-owned land and hunt. And there's no, not really any structure that you can do that. You can buy tags for animals, and you actually have to, in the instance where that piece of property doesn't have something that's called exemption. Exemption is you are exempted from the government laws. You are exempted from those land use laws. Now, to obtain exemption just means you have to put up a barrier that prevents anything leaving your property or anything entering your property. So that is the reason why there's a lot of fences around Southern Africa. It's mainly to comply with that legal requirement. And once you have, then what you do inside your land does not need government tags, government quota, governance. You can effectively do what you want. So if there was a parcel of land that was government owned that had low fence or no fence and it had some game on it, and for whatever reason you were able to get permission to go and hunt there, you would effectively, legally, have to have purchased a permit from a conservation office to allow you to take that animal. If you haven't done that, you are liable for prosecution as a poacher. So you always need to, one way or the other, have purchased the animal before you hunt.
And here's a good question. What's trashy to you? when we say we're running
What is
trash in
considered
Arizona,
trash,
it's
yeah.
deer, it's javelina. So are you just running leopards, or like you're like, dang it, he just ran a pig, or what's your trash over there that you don't want your dogs running?
Yeah. So we did try to game proof them because there's so many different antelopes and similar, but there are so many small critters, as you would call them, little genets and small cats and civets and porcupines and all that. So a lot of that we do have to game proof them against. I think in the way that you put it now, trashy would be running something like hyena, which my
Oh,
dogs still do. But yes,
They catch a
so
hyena?
yeah, they'll catch a hyena. Yeah.
will they kill a hyena?
So that,
Ooh.
um, if there were enough, yes, probably.
Oh,
But hounds, at least our hounds, aren't really effective killers.
oh,
They will, they're not. You'd have to have a dog or something that would go in
yeah.
and effectively
They
kill
just
it. But
they like to
they
harass
could
them.
work it long enough. Exactly. They could work it long enough and work it and work it and work it, and eventually, yes. But they don't have a killing bite, as you know. So yeah,
I would imagine a hyena leaves a lot of scent.
they do. It's the worst smell. It's terrible.
The dogs
Mm.
love it.
Like a javelina.
Well,
Just like a javelina.
Oh man,
Brett loves chasing javelinas.
I've caught 2 javelinas in the last month and a half. Put them in cave holes.
yeah, it's the
Interesting. It's
most
interesting
frustrating
stuff.
thing.
So what else do we got? Do you have anything else, Gavin, you'd like to say?
Um, what are you guys doing? What's happening there in the States with the wolves killing the hounds?
Oh. That's a bad word. That's a bad word to
Yeah.
people who
Up north.
aren't in. I mean, everybody I think loves the wolves as far as, but nobody wants them there. They look cool on a poster. They look cool on a shirt.
Mm,
The wolf lovers think that you can just turn wolves loose and the ecosystem will just take care of itself. But when you see wolves killing or decimating the whole herds, no matter what you tell them, it's not happening. And
mm,
it's the federal government coming in saying we're doing this. So it's kind of a really sore subject. Wolves is a sore subject to a hunter.
yeah.
All the old timers say the same things, that there was a place, there's a place, of course they were all hunting predators. They said there's a place for the lion, for the bear and everything, but all of them hated the wolves. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just indiscriminate killers and terrible
They
on
were
the landscape.
eradicated for a reason, not
Yes.
just because they're wolves. They're eradicated because of their actions as wolves. They're taking wolves out of one state that are problem childs, putting them in another state, and wondering why they're still problem childs.
Why they're not
It,
reforming?
it's a slippery slope. It's a really slippery
Mm,
slope, and nobody likes them. I don't think any person that is a true conservationist likes them. It's just your tree huggers and your activists that really like them. Your common
mm,
public. I explain this every time that your hunters are about this much of your population. Your anti-hunters are this much of your population, and then you got that big chunk of non-hunters. And I don't know how
mm,
Africa is. We grew up hunting. This country was built on it. And now
mm,
everybody grows up on social media. So whatever
mm,
social media says, it's true. Like that's what they
mm,
believe. And I don't know what your social media presence is. Me and Brett have talked about this. Why do people watch these videos? Because they're sitting in an apartment. You know,
that's
there's
right.
I don't know if Africa has welfare. Like I don't know if they have a card you can go get food on and then go home. Literally go get McDonald's or fast food, go home and just sit around and watch TV and not. That's fact right there, Tim B. Wolves are the number one poacher in every state. They're seeing more and more
Mm,
wolves doing more and more bad things. And
mm.
These people who are in love with wolves just won't buy it. Just won't buy it.
They
Kind
don't
of like a
understand.
wife who gets beat by her husband and you tell her it's not good, she just goes right back to him, you know.
Mm,
So it's a slippery slope. Wolves is just a bad word. It's a bad
Yes.
word.
mm.
What's your
Now, I've
what's
seen
your
some of the
animal there that's that way? What is your do you guys have something that
there's a wild dog. It's called the painted wolf in some circles. It's the African wild dog, and they have a very similar ecology to the wolf. Um, Pack animal, pass down their prey, pretty indiscriminate, but they're not as large and powerful and dominating as the wolves. In fact, because they are quite weak um, competitors to a lion, hyena, leopard, their numbers never really reach great proportion. And they're not quite as imposing as the wolf is, to my limited knowledge of the wolf. But to hounds, they're not really a threat at all. I've never heard of anything. They could potentially be, but I've never heard of it. And I hunt in areas where there's wild dogs around, and I've never had a situation where they come investigate. Lions do, unfortunately. Lions will come and just destroy a whole pack of dogs quickly, and they will come to the sound. They're interested, and so they're attracted to the dogs hunting.
Yeah.
But the wild dog would be a similar niche as the wolf, but not as much of a problem.
Have you had trouble with lions in the past?
Yes, I have, and it's a pretty dangerous situation. It can get into very dangerous for humans too. You know, wolf. I mean, a lion is a big beast. Eh? They're quite
Big.
cowardice, really, but they when it gets dark, they are like brave.
Hmm.
plethora of African information?
There you go.
Love it. It sounds similar. Like the only difference I think is your government has more control over lands and animals and all that. It seems like to where we have all the public land and we just go buy a tag and we can go hunt.
A lot of rules,
But
but
Yeah,
not a lot
yeah,
of enforcement.
exactly.
that's see,
Yeah.
we have a lot of rules and too much enforcement sometimes. And you guys have all these rules, and it almost seems like it's a vigilante to take care of some of these poachers sometimes. Is that fair to say?
It is, and that has occurred in many instances, but it's also a bit of a slippery slope, and it's a difficult situation. Um, yeah, a private security and private enforcement has really become the most common uh, um, common governance of these laws. The government itself or its agents in forms of police officers or wildlife officials or that are, are, are useless. They're fundamentally corrupt, most of them. They have no motivation. It's just a uniform and a paycheck. So really, it's a private sector that is funded by private citizens that are paying taxes twice. They're paying them to a government police force that does nothing, and then they're paying it again to a private police force that does something.
Wow.
So but
Are
that's the only real enforcer.
are their hands tied? I mean, are their hands tied by the
And
government?
the private security firms have found ways, and there are definitely laws that enable them to arrest, to very very competent uh, firearms and and other equipment and machinery. And so yes, and they are far more advanced in many situations than the government forces would be. And so there is a private entity that overruns the government competency by far. And yes, they can operate within the law, but still effectively. But it costs, it's far more expensive than the taxes, put it that way.
Have you ever had your dog's trash
Sounds
on a
like,
lion?
Yes, I have. In fact, on a whole pride, we had hunted a leopard, and I do quite a bit of hunting at night to try and avoid tsetse fly, and it works better in terms of heat and being able to have good scenting conditions, and that's we have good success on leopard at night, and it had been such a case that we'd been trailing a leopard in the morning, and it got up to about 10 a.m. in the morning, and the sun's too hot. There's too much evaporation, and so I pulled the dogs off. We hadn't caught up to the leopard, but I had an idea, sort of the last traveling direction. We mapped it on a GPS course, and so I returned in the early evening that night, and I think we were on the tracks by about 9 at night. And we managed to catch up to that leopard, and we shot it, and we returned back to the main road, but we were very far from where the vehicle was. So I left the hunter, and he had a buddy with him, and we had some government game scouts that stayed there, and myself and the tracker and the hounds. We walked back. I had one quite badly injured dog, had been bit into the corridor I just rode above the eye socket. In fact, it was so hard that canine of the leopard broke off into out of his jaw, and it had left the tooth here in the bone
ooh.
of the eye socket. I had to pry it out with my Leatherman. But anyway, and he was breathing, but he was knocked out. He was unconscious. Anyway, so I left him there with the group, and I went back to go and had to go and retrieve the vehicle. And we were walking down the road, and it was probably 2 a.m. in the morning. And I just had, it was quite a while ago, but I had those old mag lights that they take those big cell batteries, and I had the one that took the 3-cell, and it was never a very good light, but back then it was breaking technology. And I was shining just ahead of us on either side of the bush as we were walking down the fairly main dirt track back to the vehicle, and I noticed these eyes just in the bush, and there were many of them, and I thought it was buffalo, and so I spoke to the guy with me. He had a rifle. I just had a revolver with me at that stage, and said, "Be aware, because buffalo can be very, very dangerous." And the dogs were all slow and tired and dragging their tongues, and so we were making slow progress. But when I kept my torch on these eyes, the hair started to go up and down and up and down. And immediately, I knew that's not, that's cat behavior. That's a cat picking its head up and dropping it down and picking it up. And I knew what we were walking into. And as I sort of realized that, there were several of the big cats on the side of the road, we came up to where they must have left the road, sensing us a long time ago, approaching, because we were sloppy on the road and they in their hunting mode. And they had moved off, and they were sort of lying in the ambush. But because there's humans there and there's still a little bit of a respect, they hadn't just rushed the dogs. But as we got to that point, all the dogs picked up again, and they started to take that track and go in straight into where these lions were, where this ambush was. And it was, yes, it was a nightmare, because I was screaming and shouting, but at the same time, it was ridiculous, because all I'm doing is causing mayhem. And when what we need is focused attention just to get out of there. But we can't run away either, because as soon as we do that, that's going to trigger the lions as well. And then they did. They started coming at us, and we had to fire shots to keep them away. And the dogs then wanted to go, and it was a mess. But eventually I was able to command the dogs, and we moved off and moved off and moved off and got out of a distance, made enough gap, and the lions didn't pursue us immediately. Got to the vehicle, and when I came back down along the road, we interpreted through the tracks how those lions had followed us, but they hadn't
Oh,
made
wow.
that actual.
Oh boy,
So, we come across them.
there it is. There's your story to end on, Brett.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Gavin, thank you so much for coming on. That was great. I learned a lot.
Yep.
I didn't know anything about
What?
in Africa.
What's your website? You have a website, right?
Panther Trackers.
Yes, so the company name is Panther Trackers, Panther Trackers, Trackers, and Panther is because the leopard's taxonomical name, scientific name is Panthera pardus, and Trackers is because that's pretty much what we
That's what
do.
you do.
We're tracking them, yeah.
Makes
So
sense.
Panther Trackers.
I bet you the stories around the campfires when people are there is just phenomenal. 20 years
it's
of
such
it,
a
right?
wonderful space. Yeah,
Yep.
it's a unique, wonderful space, and yeah, we invite everybody to come share it with us, man. Find a way, get there, and you've got to do it once at least. Come join us.
Sounds
And
Beautiful.
thank you for having me on, and appreciate the
You bet.
time. And I'm very grateful for this wider community and for this technology that allows us to speak to like-minded people in other spaces of the world, man. And we're all the same, man. We're all the same. Just we sound different. You guys have got funny accents.
We do.
Social media is like a weapon. It can be used for good and it can be used for bad.
Absolutely. Like most.
We got to use it for the good as much as we can. We do appreciate you taking some time out. It looks like it's windy there. I'm looking in your window back there, and it looks like it's windy.
That's not wind.
That cyclone is going to be hitting. It's going to, yeah, it's
We
coming.
had 50-mile-an-hour gusts here.
Well, good deal.
Oh.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and guys, I'm going to take a few weeks off. I just want everybody to know. So go over to Chris's. He'll have his on Wednesday night at 6, right, Chris?
Yes, sir.
And then y'all probably get to see Benny there. And or if you really got to get a fix, I know Houndsman XP has a raw dog on Tuesday nights. Is that right, Chris?
Yep.
So they talk hounds and stuff over there too. So guys, everybody, thank you.
Gavin, appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We'll see you. Thank you.
All righty.
Bye.
Thanks, then. Bye-bye.